Alright, we all know about the Gigaleak, right? We all remember it. It was a fantastic time. We all know the big things that were in it, like Luigi and some Ura Zelda stuff and Yoshi's Island, Super Donkey Kong prototypes. Yeah, well, obviously by the title, that's not what I'm here to talk about right now. I want to highlight the more overlooked stuff, the things that got overshadowed, and talk about just how long this actually went on. So, before I get to the super obscured stuff, something that more people probably still know is that this wasn't like the start in July. No, this was going on since like May, even earlier than that, perhaps. And while we knew actual games were coming at the time, it was mostly just like test demos and functioning system stuff for the Nintendo 64, with one little exception I'll get on a bit. But yeah, it's mostly this stuff. Is still really cool though. People do remember this, but unfortunately I do think it did get overshadowed later on, and I do wish more people remembered it, because this is what started everything. These big things that were being publicly shown by the invocation of Sebastian, whatever that name is supposed to mean, but thank you for showing these. And the big one during this was Flake. Remember Flake? Yeah, he's kind of the big mascot that started off this, I think. We need to make Flake the appreciation mascot of this, like, give the dude into other things like Smash, and never forget Flake, that creepypasta looking little dude. Thank you, Flake. The more obscure stuff that I feel like, surprisingly though, a lot of people missed, and just like the base public doesn't seem to know about too much yet, is that this continued all the way on past July into September. Like, most people seem to center like that end of July point when Luigi was found, and the models and early beta stuff for Ocarina of Time were found, and so on and so on. And then I feel like most people dropped at that point and then just totally missed that there was stuff going on all the way up until September. Now, granted, the stuff in September isn't as big as all of that, so it makes sense that it isn't as, like, in the public eye, but I still want to acknowledge them. And before I get into that, I just want to give a huge shout out to the cutting room floor, because all of the info and shots and everything that you see from this come from there. I found all of this just because of them by accident. And yeah, so this is more so just giving you samples of what I think is the most interesting, what most people find the most interesting. But please go to the cutting room floor yourself, support them, and look at all of this yourself if you want everything. And the first thing I'll start with that I find interesting personally, because it's what caused me to find all of this, is that a prototype build of a Yu-Gi-Oh game was found. Now, this was released, but this is a French prototype and goes over some differences, and you can see for once Frog the Jam was included. However, stuff that you all will probably find more interesting, which I'll build up to more and more, is that, do you know some Game Boy camera stuff? Yeah, that was on there. And this was an unreleased, version of that was all Hello Kitty stuff. And it would have completely changed the UI of the Game Boy camera and such, and this was never released. And likewise, a peripheral for the Game Boy also was... How many of you remember that there was a fucking sewing machine for it? Something that you would load up and send to your sewing machine and get embroidered onto your clothes. Yeah, I'm sure most of you probably heard that in Digino Gaming years ago and forgot about it. And there was a Mario one that, expectedly didn't sell well at all. But what this revealed is that there's a Kirby one that was unreleased, and here it is. Okay, not big enough for you yet? Well, I know people have really gone into liking fucking Wii Sports Resort, and have gotten really sentimental over that. So yeah, that was on there. There was Wii Sports Resort stuff, and the Gigaleak Sporte, and a lot of people just completely missed this. And what this is that this was found in the files, and it's a scrapped idea of you getting to change the Miis in the intro sequence, which would have been a nice touch. It kind of reminds me of Miitopia, but let's move on from that. Now, a lot of this, I'm just going to be sampling you two again. Just the stuff that I found the most interesting in Wii Sports is this archery minigame. Beforehand, you can see that there is an actual real person explaining how to do this, and their styling, and look at that fucking bow they have. Just look at that. And likewise, just a normal thing that I find interesting is an early version of a balloon that you would pop, or like a score points, and it was orange, which isn't in the final game in this regard. Now, surprisingly, what's more interesting than Wii Sports Resorts is Wii Sports without the resorts. And for the main reason is that this image was found in there. Now, this is from a demo in 2006. Obviously, it was not in the actual game. There wasn't a functioning version of this found in the other game, but it makes you wonder why they put it in there. I mean, you could probably find a multitude of reasons, but, you know, it makes you think maybe they considered it at some point for Wii Sports to become an actual feature, or for a resort. It really makes you think. It did become a thing in Pilot Wings, as per tradition in Pilot Wings, but, no, it makes you think, well, if we could have had this in Wii Sports, it would have been cool. And some of those things for Wii Sports I didn't go over was stuff that lines up to like E3 demos of Resort for 2008 and such. Anyway, moving on, for the last thing I'm going to be talking about is Pokemon stuff. And there was a lot of prototype stuff regarding Mystery Dungeon. Now, granted, a lot of these were super close and similar to the final build. Some of these are such small differences, it's almost hilarious as to how they even existed, of just very minor changes in sprites that you wouldn't even notice. I'm surprised anybody noticed. And, you know, just very small spelling mistakes like you see here that were fixed. But you can still look up all that yourself if you want, because there was a whole entire debug thing. Anyway, still with Pokemon, something that I found really fucking fascinating, and I was surprised was turned up and nobody really talked about it, at least I haven't seen anybody talk about it, like nothing appeared in front of me, is Pokemon Picross was found. And I'm not talking about the 2015 game, I'm talking about the unreleased one from the 1990s, and, you know, this was actually finished, but it never came out. And what's really fascinating about it is that this was actually really obscure and really hard to find any info on beforehand. You know, the most I know about it, funnily enough, is in one of my favorite Iceberg videos, this Pokemon one, is, this was one of the bottom layers of it, and yeah, like it was talked about super vaguely on there, but just a couple of months later, it comes out through the Gigaleak, which is hilarious. It reminds me of how Luigi came out right after all the Mario Iceberg stuff. And yeah, it's here, it was fully done like Star Fox 2, but it never came out, and we just have all the info on this once it's game now, and just nobody seems to really know that much. And funnily enough, there's like unused content inside the unreleased game itself, so yeah. Anyway, that was a very brief sample. I want to keep this short. All this stuff, again, go to the cutting floor yourself for the September 2020 Gigaleak, and look at all the other stuff on there too from the entire leak. I mean, there was so much that people are still talking about to this day, which I love, because that was a great ass fucking time. And part of the reason why I also wanted to make this video is because I wanted to do another one on the Gigaleak, where I'm talking about the stuff people know, but because there's not really much info to add, I'm talking about from a really, like, sentimental, emotional point, and a specific thing on there that will make more sense when I get to it. So, yeah, thank you for watching.